How's it going? Y'all get that stimulus check yet? Make sure you spend it on important stuff and not on JPEGs of spaceships now. Or crude oil, it would seem. Something that might be worth your money though is the 2006 video game Dark Messiah, Heroes of Might and Magic, an immersive sim and the premier kicking simulator of all video games. Dark Messiah is Arcane Studios' sophomore title based on the Heroes of Might and Magic property, commissioned by Ubisoft back when Arcane was still a free agent. Arcane was initially using an early version of the newly minted Source engine to try and make a sequel to their critically acclaimed first title, Arx Fatalis, but it wasn't going too well, and it seemed like anyone who tried to use the Source engine while it was young was doomed to a grisly, glitchy fate. So they put that on hold and looked for other work. Colantonio et al. Took a job from Ubisoft, who had recently acquired the rights to the Might and Magic franchise. So they made a game using their knowledge of the Source engine that let the player go about the game in any way they saw fit, with oodles of exploration and mayhem to be done. This is arguably the predecessor to Dishonored, since while a lot of people, including myself, have drawn parallels between the Thief franchise and Dishonored, Dark Messiah's combat is much more similar to Dishonored's than just about anything in the Thief franchise. I'm thinking now is a good time to get a playthrough of Dark Messiah in, since it's pretty cheap even when it's not on sale, and since we've all got the time right about now, it'll give you a nice sense of perspective on Dishonored and other Arcane Studios games. Oh, and you can kick people into the abyss, spiky walls, and pretty much any other object that looks like it would cause trouble. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's get started with the basic stuff. The first thing you're going to notice about Dark Messiah is that it's an immersive sim in the sense that you're in an action environment where you can level into whatever skill set you'd like in an RPG-esque fashion. There's other immersive sim stuff like emergent gameplay a la Size 12, but we'll get to that in a sec. Your three main means to general combat are the same flavors you get in just about every sword and sorcery game ever. Magic, melee, stealthy stuff. You could consider ranged stuff like bows to be their own thing too, but they suck, so don't. I went for a good old-fashioned swords and shields for this playthrough, but stuff like knives and their massive stealth multipliers, setting things on fire, and general mayhem a la environmental skills are valid playstyles. Each skill set has its major perks and setbacks. Melee's primary reward in combat is that you get a power meter that once fully charged will let you insta-kill an enemy and a little bit of slow-mo spectacle. Magic can be a bit challenging thanks to the relative scarcity of mana potions if you're going to be using that as your primary means, but staves are fairly easy to level into and are a good backup if you're hurting for the juice. Also, they get giant, ruin someone's day-sized fireballs. Enemies are fairly straightforward in Dark Messiah. There isn't going to be much that surprises you, as this is an early source game with early source AI. Most of these things just run at you to attack or get in range for their range attacks. What makes the combat interesting is the map design and all the ways that you can screw people over. The enemies are kind of varied in how their attacks hurt you, because some hurt more than others, some have debuffs, some are just really tanky, but as far as AI design goes, enemies are pretty bland, but you didn't come to this for cool enemy design and AI. Dark Messiah is centered a lot around spectacle set-piece moments, like shooting down whatever the heck that thing is with crossbow turrets, chasing one of those zombie guys across rooftops of a crumbling city, fighting dragons, that kind of stuff. Along the way, there'll be nice little distractions for you, like being able to forge new, better gear at abandoned but still operational smithies, or looking off the beaten path for cool new stuff. That sort of thing. There's also a rope bow that you get about a third of the way through the game, and that'll give you a lot more verticality if you take the time to set things up, and also be used in nearly every puzzle after you get it, because this is a Source engine game, we gotta have physics and platforming puzzles. It's not that I don't like this rope bow, it's just I feel like I spent too much time trying to figure out the exact scrap of ceiling I needed to shoot to get high enough to get to the next area, instead of doing like cool stuff with it. It's nice having a way to skip over floors where there's poison or like very annoying zombie spawns if you get too close to certain areas, so it's kind of a wash. Now, I may as well talk about the story, but I'll try to be as brief as I can because I gotta be honest, it's forgettable. You play as a guy named Sareth who's gotta go deliver a MacGuffin to a city because his master told him to, and because apparently it's gonna stop a demon prince from coming about because prophecy. Along the way, you'll get invaded by skeletons and bad dudes that make you do mandatory stealth sections. You also meet Bad Girl, who the boss merges with your soul, and Good Girl, who will just say exposition at you. There has never been a more obvious good ending versus evil ending. I'm sure this is all cool Might and Magic lore, but from this game it sounds like off-brand Tolkien, and while a lot is exposited at you, nothing is really explained or fleshed out. A game can be a good entry into a greater universe without a ton of lore, so long as it gives you like time to understand the stakes, gives you a couple likable characters to invest you in the world, or at least gives you a fish out of water character to justify normal people explaining the basic things of the world so that the audience knows what's going going on. Dark Messiah has none of these. Thankfully, story isn't too huge in video games, and it also doesn't have a morality system that forces you to deal with enemies in a certain way if you want the good ending. You can murder all the bad guys you want and not get scolded at the end because you did a bad thing. There are good versus evil endings in this game, but they're less based on how many bad dudes did you kill and more on what did you do in certain situations. There are certain things that will set you up for the good ending and certain things that will set you up for the evil ending. Okay, 5 seconds for spoilers. Now get out if you don't want them. Okay, cool. Midway through the game, you get the ability to turn into a demon that makes you basically invincible and able to tear enemies to bits with your bare hands. But if you do it anywhere outside the part that teaches you how to use it, you're on a one-way path to the bad ending. This is why you're bonded with Batgirl, because apparently you were the demon prince you were supposedly trying to stop all along. You can just wade in holy water though at your local church for a sec and it'll all get fixed. You'll even get to use the best weapon in the game. But even a self-exorcism isn't enough to make Batgirl stop trying to say edgy stuff in your ear. Okay, that's enough story and general gameplay. Let's get to the fun stuff. Alright, forget everything you heard about combat choices, rope arrows, leveling. The main weapon and style in this game is the bottom of your foot. I defy you to name a game with more fun, inventive, and satisfying melee attacks than Seraph's boot. This game is set up perfectly too for doing it. During the tutorial, there's a zombie just vibing at the top of a big pit, and rather than talk about stealth kills or sneaking by him or whatever, your master's just like, yo, kick that loser into the shadow realm. And when you do it, it's like a drug. You need more, and you don't care how you come by it. You're sated for the moment though, as you're allowed to go into a practice room where you get a nice spiky wall to kick dudes right into. I don't care what any of the reviewers said, this never gets old. Every level will have spiky walls, bottomless pits, and other fun things to kick enemies into, where you will almost always do that instead of traditional combat whenever it's available. The only thing you're limited by is that melee attacks drain your stamina, but you can still just keep on kicking dudes and watch them ragdoll around. Arcane got their money's worth out of Source Engine physics. You know what's even better than kicking dudes into spiky walls and off cliffs? Kicking dudes into environmental hazards that cause spectacular destruction. Everywhere from old ruins to the castle that for the most part seems well maintained will have structural weaknesses or poorly stacked piles of stuff that kicking, or better yet, kicking dudes into, will cause everything to collapse in a spectacular fashion, which is gonna mess up anyone near it. Exploding barrels are never going to be the same for you after playing Dark Messiah and seeing what happens when you can really cause some environmental damage. Tell me all the games that have remotely as much chaos as this, because I'm looking for video fuel and a real good time. And if all of this wasn't enough, there's throwing thing. It's kind of like telekinesis from BioShock. In fact, you get a magical ability that is basically telekinesis from BioShock 1 year previously, but you can pretty much pick up and throw any medium to large item in this game. It's great for when you're too hurt to risk getting close or you're out of mana, because you can do a good chunk of damage by just hurling a box at somebody and watching them fall down. Or at least you'll get to knock them over, which will buy you about 10 seconds to try to use a healing item or get more mana. You know what makes throwing things even better? Stairs. Admittedly, you can kick people downstairs too, but there's something that makes me cackle like a maniac when I knock a bad guy down the stairs by chucking a barrel at their head and then watching them ragdoll all the way down a flight of stairs. Then I get to watch them crawl back up, knowing that they want to tear whoever chucked a big old pot at them a new one, only to see you smiling at the top of the stairs with a barrel or something. There's this nice little bit where if you damage enemies enough to maim them but not to kill them, they'll try to crawl away from you, only for you to be looming over them with yet another crate. Well, most of this was explicitly planned by the devs. It's still some of the best emergent gameplay out there, as there's just so many ways you can make your own fun with this melee and physics system. Alright, so we're going to take a little break, but we're not going to be doing an anti-sponsor, since I have to admit the last one ran too long, since I've been trying to piecemeal all the stuff that would normally go into a channel update video over 3 or 4 normal videos, since literally no one wants to watch a channel update video. In the future, I'm going to keep them under 2 minutes though, preferably 90 seconds or less. In the meantime, we're going to do a leftover challenge, since it's been way too long since I've done a cooking segment. For those of you living under a YouTube rock, there's this thing going around called the leftover challenge, where you order too much food from your favorite local restaurant and then use the leftovers to make something tasty. I've ordered from a barbecue joint in Fullerton near your safety school called Lead Bellies. It's good stuff. On top of a good old-fashioned 3-meat plate, which I got about half my pulled pork and a bit of tri-tip left over, I've also got me most of an order of pork fries, a monstrosity that's served on a platter where your diet goes to die. I don't even know how many different kinds of fried fatty pig bits are piled on top of a pile of cheesy fries. Grab yourself some gordita-sized tortillas, since we're going to be taking this much, and tossing it on the cutting board. Slice it up this ways, and then add a bit more of that pulled pork, because overkill is a word for people who fear living life to their fullest. Now, get a little of your favorite oil on the pan, or if you want to be a real degenerate like me, you take the extra grease that's rendered out of your meat since throwing them in the fridge and use that instead of a spray or oil for maximum thriftiness and or excess. A spoonful of this crap will be more than enough for the entire thing we're doing here. Heat that porky mess up on a medium to high heat until the fries and bits easily come apart with the poking of a spatula, and this should take less than 5 minutes because all of this is already cooked. Okay, once that's nice and hot, distribute that mess onto 3 flour tortillas that we got previously. Add that gravy that came with the fries and maybe some cheese if you wanna, then wrap these suckers up tight. Crank that heat and then put your little mini burritos onto the pan, foldy side down for a couple minutes, flipping once the bottom side browns and stays together, so like maybe 3 minutes tops. Give them a sec to rest, and then get them on your cutting board and slice them down the middle in this funny way so you get maximum surface area for the dip-ins. Now, grab that extra barbecue sauce you got and dip. If for some reason your local barbecue joint doesn't do pork fries, this will probably work well with chili fries, pastrami fries, or some good old-fashioned asada fries from wherever combo plates are sold. I did pizza delivery full-time for a couple years, and even when there wasn't a global pandemic going on, food delivery and restaurant industry stuff can be a hard job. Please remember all the food service workers who need your support now more than ever, and all the poor sods doing delivery routes right now that need a decent tip now more than ever. Now, let's get back to the video. Now, there are a few bugbears with this game that I'd be missed if I didn't talk about, so I'll go over the pain points real quick before wrapping this up. Firstly, there's an issue with the misplaced DLL file. Not missing, mind you, quite literally misplaced in the wrong folder. It took me a bit of looking up when I first played because the game wouldn't run properly, but all you gotta do is go into one of your subfolders, find a DLL file, and then cut and paste it into the same folder that the executable is in. Like, they literally put the DLL in the wrong folder. I can't stress this enough. It's almost silly, especially how I have no idea how this hasn't been fixed by literally anyone in charge of keeping this game up on Steam right about now. But the issue has persisted 14 years since this game's launch. Then there's how this game tends to crash at higher graphics settings. This is effectively solved though by setting the game to medium overall in the graphics, and you'll be pretty much fine. I don't know if this is a memory leak thing or whatever, but I find it really annoying until I again started Googling around. I'm trying to save you the Googling around here if you haven't figured this out yet. As far as actual game stuff goes, inventory management is a pain, and the hotbar setup might be good in a World of Warcraft MMO setup, but here in an action game, it's clunky, and I would have preferred like a weapon wheel or something that I could assign things to. Other than that, your inventory will always be an unorganized mess that includes all of your spells for some reason, and you have to do this weird little hotbar dance when equipping shields because otherwise it will default to the weakest weapon you have, so you'll be looking like an idiot wielding your endgame shield with a blacksmith's hammer. Just try not to ever change what weapon you're using during combat and you'll be fine. Lastly, there's dealing with anything that flies. I blame this in part on your inability to kick things that are flying, and unless you're skilled into endgame bows or high power spells, whenever you encounter a dragon, you're going to have a bad time. So of course the final boss will repeatedly summon dragons between stages of his health because screw you, that's why. I'd recommend Dark Messiah just for the near religious experience that is kicking a dude into a damaged support column and watching half a warehouse's worth of crap fall down on him and his entire squad. Sure, it's got its hiccups and the story isn't all that great, but it's $10 even when it isn't on sale, and on top of being a great action romp, it's some great perspective for the Dishonored franchise and a good way to kill 8 hours or so. The next video is going to be about wildly speculating for Bioshock 4 or whatever they called it based on sketchy, unverified information, since all of you quite literally asked for it. I have no idea how I'm going to make a full video based on what's happened so far, since a few of the developments for it seem to have been brought to a stop. But Lord knows I've got the time to figure it out right about now. I've got all the time in the world. So thank you all so much for joining me. Special $10 patron shouts out to Elisa Nera, Johan Carlson, McFluffers, French Toast, and new $10 patron Chili Moonbuns. Also hello and welcome to new patrons Tritonio, Funboy, and Chili Moonbuns again. That's a fun name to say. And a last minute hello and welcome to Crocodilus Pontifex. I record these on Wednesday, but if you pledge like up until the point that like the video is about to go live, I'll still say a hello and welcome to you because let's be honest, it takes all of 2 minutes to record and splice this in. Feel free to stop by the Discord, patron or not, to hang out with me and the boys, and please consider the efforts of all the hardworking people, not only keeping us fed, but also the folks on the front lines right now keeping the Rona down. So in the meantime, stay safe, stay inside, wash your hands, and enjoy this cat video. Be very quiet. It's nap time. And the saucy boy has his little cuddle buddy Eeyore with him. Ah, rats. He knew. Oh, you just want to snuggle with Eeyore? Oh, you're a snuggle monster with Eeyore. I guess since it's been a long time since I explained it and those videos were years ago, I should explain that this little Eeyore doll right here and this little blankie he got, oh sorry about your toesies, these were the only things that Frisk was left with. Like, him and his 2 little brothers were left in a box on the doorstep of my wife's work overnight, and we chose to take him in, and some of my wife's coworkers took his brothers in. He was just 5 weeks old and was so small he could fit in my one hand. You were an adorable little fluffle. This never gets old. I don't care how much you hate me.